Alright, this is my audience, and they're here to help me succeed in this, okay? Thank you very much. Alright, so, let me start this off. My name is Carlos, and this is my communications class. This is the third speech that we have to do, so let me just read this off and we'll get going. My topic is on religious conflicts. I don't know if you guys know what that is or know it by definition. Doesn't matter because I'm going to tell you. Religious conflicts in our world are, well, it's religious war / holy war, and it is primarily caused or justified by differences in religion. Every individual on the planet is either aware or not aware of their spiritual needs. Some with a religion, others without, and some also with no spiritual aspects in their life at all. And to catch us up a little bit at the topic at hand, the practices of religion can lead to inflexibility and intolerance in the face of other religious, economic, or ethnic beliefs. Sectarianism, where a religion is conflicted within with discrimination towards others, or by trying to make a wall between, or making a wall between superior and inferior beings, which doesn't exist at all. Terrorism is also something we know about. By definition, it's more of a person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation for political senses. And racism is also something we're real aware of in this country also. I don't think I need to go through that. But how I feel I'm qualified to speak about this with you is because I myself am considered a minority or a Hispanic growing up in the same society as you. I've personally never been in a victimizing situation where I have been hurt or offended, but just because I don't let it offend me doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Like the stereotypes of I love tacos, or I listen to mariachi bands, or things like that. And also with the racial slurs and jokes about being a wetback or spick or etc. I stand proud as the person that I am because of my personal accomplishments and who I am because of those. Of course, the last thing in my head that I see myself as is a Mexican, but I also get to represent that image just because of who I am. And growing up in a Catholic family, I realized that there were other religions inside of my community, but was never that educated about it. But the very first thing I learned about other religions and whatever else it is that I need to respect it and not be ignorant about it. No matter the practice, the belief, or the ethnicity group, I shouldn't seclude them or exclude them in anything. And that's something I personally feel like everyone needs to learn first about a religion or anything else, is just to kind of keep the space and respect everybody else. And so, mine begins with, let me ask you a question. That also Kim Michaels has asked. Kim Michael once asked, how do you feel about people killing one another in the name of God? For example, 9/11 in 2001. That's an unforgettable date that the whole world will never forget. Other examples, the Paris bombing in 2015. Older events like 2005 London bombings, the 2004 Madrid train bombings, more recent ones like the Manchester Arena bombing, I don't want to butcher it, the Burkina Faso church shooting also, where 5 died. There's also the mosque shooting, and also the Charleston shooting that I will be talking about later in the speech. There are over 1 million terrorist suspected videos on YouTube, and it's kind of silly because that's a waste of time. And we don't need these kind of conflicts in our world. It's a norm that we kind of need to get rid of. We don't need shootings every other day in high schools or churches or Smiths or whatever it is. But we are pretty good at doing, like alerting other general public to get out of the way, or officials to come and help. And we also do good of helping funding the victims after their time of need, or actually in their time of need, by sending packages of provisions, clothes, and survival equipment, and some even shelters. And in prosecution, I'm coming back to the Charleston shooter, Dylan Roof. He took the life of 9 people back in 15. And even though it wasn't a massive scale shooting, it's not something that it gets overlooked because it's still just as sadistic as any other terrorist act. And because of his actions, Mr. Roof is sentenced to life in prison and also sentenced to death by lethal injection. And I don't know if that's where you want to get, but don't get any ideas. As many tests as he took and as much evidence that was laid out, the court ruled that Roof is competent enough to stand trial and also to self-represent because of the mental health awareness that they had to go through with him. They made sure that he was okay, and he was very, as sick as it is, he was very conscious and aware of what he was doing. There's also racism and examples like very mildly like white supremacy or the Aryan supremacy or anything you really want to put up. And there's many subdivisions under those flags as well. There's other examples like the Holocaust, that was a very racist act. Slavery in the US and many other countries before our time was going on. And then coming back to a little more recent and modern age, there's Christopher Hassan, a Coastal Guard lieutenant working in the nation's capital, deemed a domestic terrorist that considered to murder innocent civilians on a massive scale, and also wished, please God, let there be a race war. Coming back a little while, Timothy McVeigh is also a domestic terrorist and is actually responsible for the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing at the hospital. He is also considered a terrorist, even though he's not of the colored skin. McVeigh was also a part of government personnel, and it was in 1997 when he was finally sentenced, and also he was killed by lethal injection. And a little closer to home is also the Vegas shooting. That's another form of domestic terrorism. And racism is just kind of like an issue that you can't fully take on just head to head. For some people, their family has kept them inside a culture that is incorporated, and it is also an internal conflict that will change at God's speed with no timetable to change. We can try by not being racist towards one another and by getting rid of racial slurs, stereotypes, and stereotypical jokes. And by helping the victims of racial attacks has actually already been done. It goes on today. Hate crimes and all of those are essential. By helping the victims are already essential things that happen even after the events. And prosecuting racism is a bit of a complication. It's not in every case that's there. And to conclude, the world's platform of trying to prevent religious conflict is not as big as we would like to believe, but it is steadily growing. If every individual on the planet could share their thoughts, views on how the planet is handling religious conflict that occurs more on a daily basis than other countries, we might just get closer to a true solution to satisfy all individual spiritual needs. Reviewing, being socially aware of everyone's religion is just a starting point to reaching the base of understanding. Being proactive and learning more about one's religion is a different side of the base. It's not enough to be tolerable to one's religion. It makes people's relationship grow with one another if we know a piece of info from one another. And to end it off religion is kind of an aspect of time that can't be viewed as a clean slate, but we do not have to continue the same trend that has been following us. We can come together and unite our spiritual ideas, thoughts, and feelings as one human race, and that's a good way to the path. And that's my speech.